Hey everybody, Tuesday edition of the Real Estate Investing Show. I'm Clayton Morris, so glad to have you here. We'll start in just a few minutes. Today we're going to be talking about DIY versus full service, some of the benefits and pros and cons. We'll dive into that. Hope everyone is doing well. We're going to start the show in a few minutes. If you hear some crazy wind, we've got this like major wind event that's happening, and like one of those where you can't even like open your car door, like because it throws you backwards. So if you hear some crazy wind howling past the studio windows here, you'll know what's up. So don't be alarmed. Sounds like there's a big storm happening. I don't see anybody in the chat. Let me know where you guys are joining us from. Proto Anything asks the question, what do you think about the economy as of right now? Good for a HELOC or not? I'm from California. You know, the way I always come back to it is there is no such thing as a one economy problem or one economy bubble. So yes, we're seeing higher interest rates. Yes, we're seeing warnings from Goldman Sachs about recessions that are, recession incoming, 35% chance of a recession, Federal Reserve raising rates. Of course, all of those things go into it. But all it comes down to is you're going to see investors are going to be making smart buys. I have investors reach out to me all the time about deals they're working on right now. So it doesn't matter as long as the numbers make sense. So even if you're paying more for a home equity line of credit, even if your HELOC number is a little higher, it doesn't matter as long as the overall numbers still make sense. Again, I come back to something that Robert Schimmon once told me, legend in the real estate business. Robert said, if someone's going to lend him money, free money at 10% interest, and he can get a deal that brings him, nets him 11%, he's going to take the deal. Because again, it's other people's money. It's a bank's money that's enabling you to buy an asset. So as long as the numbers make sense and the internal rate of return is still there and the IRR all makes sense, then pull the trigger, Oh, I just got my recovery certificate from COVID. Last week I had COVID again. How many of you have got, and at this point it's kind of ridiculous, right? It's like every year we're going to get this, I'm so excited though that they're removing all these mask mandates and let our children actually learn in an environment, where they don't have to wear these stupid masks. But I just got my recovery certificate in the mail. Good. Uber and Lyft just announced a few minutes ago that they are removing mask mandates for drivers and passengers. So that's the dominoes are starting to fall. Boy, the establishment doesn't like it. Wednesday Robinson says, didn't get the shot and I have not had COVID. Good for you. Good for you. thing. Maybe you've had it, maybe you didn't have it. That's the thing, right? I mean, a lot of people that have had it that have been asymptomatic, or you might have just gotten a runny nose and not even realized it. You've had it, so now you've got the natural immunity. That's the thing with the United States, is like they don't care about the natural immunity piece, but at least in Europe they do. They care about that. Let's see. Hey, JR from NorCal. Good to see you. Johnny Guthrie in Charlotte. Proto Anything says, I'm new to your channel. I'm about to learn more from you. Quick question. Should I HELOC and keep the money ready for a move? I don't quite understand the question. Could you rephrase that question? Should I HELOC and keep the money ready for a move? So are you saying, should you get a HELOC and in order to like pounce on a deal? Look, here's the bottom line. Interest rates are going up. The Federal Reserve has told us that. They're going to be going up another probably 5-6 times. So why not lock in, if you can at least get a home equity line of credit that, you know, has a locked in rate, great. The thing is, you can always readjust these rates later, you know, so home equity lines of credit, even if you got a variable rate, you could always readjust it to a fixed rate. You know, in my opinion, like if you're sitting on equity in your house, you cannot eat equity. You cannot eat the equity that you're sitting on in the house you live in. In my humble opinion, I'm not a financial advisor. I would absolutely want to be able to have that leverage at my disposal to be able to jump on a deal at any moment. So, you know, be able to lock that in when you want, you know. All right, we're going to start here in a minute. It's a weird Mercury retrograde. Is it Mercury retrograde right now or something? None of my stuff is syncing at all, which is weird. I use Drafts on the Mac, which is and iOS, which is an amazing application. But for some reason, all of my notes from a couple of my live shows, like that I'm using on my Mac, then when I sit down here in the studio at this Mac, they're not syncing, and I cannot figure out what the hell's happening. My VPN has been having problems. It's been really wacky. Really, really wacky. Wacky tobacco. See if that did anything. Reset the sync state. Yeah, so if you're just joining me again, I apologize for the wind event that we're having here. That's awesome. Am I an accredited investor? Yes. Yes, JR, I am an accredited investor. Yes, indeed. Lindsay says, not in Mercury retrograde till May 10th. Okay. And the thing is, there's going to be 2 Mercury retrogrades this year. Karina, hi, I asked before, but where did you say you like to bank that gives you more return on interest than a regular bank? I use Outlet Finance. Kelly, do we have the link we could drop here in the chat for Karina? I think we have a link that gets you like a $50 bonus when you sign up. It's free. You can open it with like $100. It's a savings account. It's a savings account alternative. I don't know what our link is off the top of my head. I have too many links rattling around in my brain. There you go. Kelly, you're the fastest. She's the fastest guns in the West. Look at that link. morrisinvest.com/outlet. So they have a 9% interest account. It's a savings account alternative, and so what it is, it's backed by Ethereum, cryptocurrency. So it's basically almost like staking, and that's why you're able to get such a high return. And Ethereum is moving from proof of work, which is mining GPU computers, that moving to proof of work to proof of stake. So staking cryptocurrency. So again, that's why they get such a high return. But yeah, that's my main savings account. I love it. I've had it for years now, and it's been fantastic. And they just rolled out a new debit card too. So, and they're not available in certain states. They weren't available in New York, I think, in Hawaii, and like Texas. So, but I think they've now maybe they've increased their territory, so they may be now available in New York and Texas. Wall Street Kitty Roars says, not a question, just gratitude for all that you and your team does for your audience. Oh, thank you so much. JR, my goal is to become an unaccredited investor. How long did it take you? That's a great question. I don't know exactly when it happened for me. It was, I think, maybe late 20s, early 30s, perhaps. Yeah, late 20s, early 30s, I think, something like that. And I think, forgive me the threshold, JR, but I think the threshold is what, $250,000 in investments? I forget off the top of my head, to be honest with you. I don't know. Man, this syncing thing is really strange. What is going on here? Just stand by a second, guys. We're going to start in a minute. When's our next mastermind? I'm not sure if we have a date for it just yet. Welcome into the Investing in Real Estate show. I'm Clayton Morris, longtime real estate investor. I've done thousands of real estate deals over the years, everything from wholesaling deals to lease options to short sales to foreclosures to new construction properties, you name it. I've done it. And on this show today, we're going to talk about DIY investing, doing it yourself and trying to find properties, renovate properties, do it all yourself, or working with a full service team, the pros and cons of each of those things. And we're going to kind of pull those apart and have a discussion about all of that. And, I have people reach out to me on a regular basis, say, where should I look for deals? Or maybe I located a deal. Now, what do I do? Now, how do I get financing? How do I pull these things together? How do I find contractors? How do I do it? Right. And so there's a lot of moving parts in this process, and we're going to talk about them on today's show. We're going to talk about some of the main differences between using a done-for-you investing service and the DIY route. Now, let me first kind of define what that is. Now, a done-for-you, full-service real estate company is what my company at Morris Invest does. So I'm going to explain what that looks like. And it's a little bit different than you've probably heard the term thrown around, like turnkey or that sort of thing. And there's different thresholds. There's different layers of this, okay? So at what layer you have DIY, right? Do it yourself. You're going to try to go out and you're going to try to locate. Maybe you work with a wholesaler. Maybe you do some direct mail campaigns to try to find an off-market deal. Maybe you bought some raw land and you're going to build a rental property on that land in a great school district, so it's going to be great cash flow. You've thought about all the tax implications. You've thought about the demographics. You've thought about the property management, like all of those things. That's DIYing. Next level is maybe you buy it from a turnkey provider, someone who's going to does the work, gives you the property, hands the keys over to you, and then they're bye-bye, they're out of the picture. Then a done-for-you service, fully done for you. That's what we do, which is we're going to work with you to help you build a portfolio of properties for many years to come. And our team, a customer service team, is always available to work with you, to help you along the way. They're going to be sort of an intermediary between a property management company and you, making sure that the property is always rented, or if there's a tenant turnover in the property, it's going to happen very quickly. Any repairs that pop up over time, they're going to be there to help you and assist you. They're going to hold your hand through that whole process. That's very different than a turnkey where they're just going to turn the keys over to you. Here you go. Here's your property. There's a tenant living in the property. If you have any problems a year from now, don't call us. So again, DIY, maybe a tenant's placed in the property, hands the keys over to you. Then there's like different layers of this, and then full service. And so those, I think, are the different thresholds. Now let's kind of dive into some of these different layers of all of this and what to expect and some of the pros and cons of each of these things. Investing with a full service company versus doing it yourself are two very different experiences. I mean, let's just put that out there, right? How many of you, show of hands, have tried to do this yourself, and how many of you have actually worked with a team that's doing it for you? It's a full-time job, right? As you know, if you've done it yourself, you know that there's a lot of things that you might not have considered, and as you start the process, you're like, holy crap, I didn't even think about this. I didn't think about the school districts. I didn't think about the lumber costs. I didn't think about property management. I didn't think about half the stuff that I need to think about, right? And that's what happens. I've been there. I've gone through it. And I'm going to tell you, it's not fun if you haven't planned it out. So we're going to kind of break this down for you. I feel confident in sharing my opinions on this because there's a lot to consider, and I've done it all. I've done it on both sides of this. My very first few properties that I ever bought were DIY. Okay, I was managing construction with contractors from states away, and I was trying to do it all myself. I didn't know, what was happening. I wasn't there managing it. That contractor could have been there, could have been sleeping on the job. It could have been working around the clock. I don't know because I wasn't there. So these things, unfold in this way. Personally, I want to talk about, like, when it comes, there's a lot to consider when it comes to your resources. How much time do you have? Like, if you're a person that works, has a job, okay, and has a family, I want you to think about the DIY side of this it's another job. You're managing a build of a property. That is a job. Placing tenants in a property. That's why property management companies exist. They're full companies that do this. Now, you're going to take that on as a responsibility. Definitely something to pay attention to. It just depends on what you want out of the experience. If you're one of those people, and we'll talk to clients on the phone like this who really want to have their hands in it. I mean, they really want to pick out paint colors and faucets and manage contract. They really want to be involved in it. They've watched those HGTV shows, or the Discovery Channel shows, like the flipping your house shows. They've met Tarek El Moussa or whatever, and they want to go and do it themselves. Well, you're going to be sorely disappointed if someone else is doing all the work for you, right? Like, if you want to find the properties, if you want to pick the paint colors, hire the contractors, and be involved in the day-to-day, then turning the keys over to somebody else is not going to make you happy. And this is definitely something that you need to weigh. If you really want to be actively involved in the process from a hobbyist perspective, then you absolutely should not be working with a full service team. You should be doing this yourself. First, let's dive into what it's like to do a DIY investment. Let's kind of break this down. I've done a lot of this. You'll need to find, first of all, a rental property in the right market, okay? So let's just start there for a second. We've talked at length on this show and on this channel about finding the right rental markets. Now, I can tell you the research that we do as a team, our on-the-ground field team, as well as our in-house marketing team, the work that they're doing to identify the demographics of a town, to understand where a new highway is going to be built, looking at, okay, we know that city planners are planning to build a new thoroughfare through this portion of the town, which will open up new shopping. It'll open up new public transportation, new jobs. All of those things go before we even think about where we're going to start to buy land, start to invest, and start to go through that process. I can tell you to find properties is very difficult. And as Warren Buffett said, if he could buy every single family home in America, he would. He can't because it's incredibly difficult to do. But BlackRock is certainly trying to do that, right? Large investment hedge funds are absolutely sticking their hands as much as they can into acquiring as much real estate as they can. The interesting thing is, for a lot of these big hedge funds, is that they can't find properties anymore. So what they're doing is they're building their own. They're building their own entire rental communities because they cannot find random single-family duplex homes anymore at a good bargain that they can go in and add value to. They're just hard to find. We have a housing crisis in the United States. We just don't have enough houses by a long shot. So to find an investment property is one thing. A friend of ours and investor reached out recently because he had found a big deal and he was looking to partner on a project. And I was surprised because he found like a large commercial deal that he's gone in with a bunch of investors on. And those are incredibly difficult to find. And if you do find one, the numbers have to make sense from a value add perspective. Like finding this large property, great, but can you add value to it so you can increase and force the appreciation on the property and increase rents and increase, the value by adding a park, a pool, or other things, right? If you're finding a 100-unit apartment complex, it's going to be very difficult to find one that hasn't already been upgraded or values added to it so that you can actually get a good return on that investment from a commercial perspective. So again, finding a deal, finding a property is number one. Then you've got to get inspections on the property, okay? Then you're going to go through the process of getting inspections to make sure that the property doesn't have any hidden problems in this property. On the surface, you may say, well, cosmetically, this looks like crap. I'm going to have to do a lot of work on this property. Then once the inspection gets there and notices there's a cracked foundation, which is going to require engineering work, or there's asbestos remediation or things like that. I can tell you in New Jersey, I've had to deal with this repeatedly when I've done deals in New Jersey. Find a property, then once you get it under contract and you're down there with the inspector in the basement and you're looking and you suddenly see, oh crap, we've got all of these asbestos pipes all around here. Now what are we going to do? Well, guess what? You can't just go in and have a contractor rip that out. You can do that illegally, but you've got to do it correctly, which is you have to have the remediation team come in. It adds extra thousands of dollars to the process because now the asbestos removal needs to be done by certified environmentally protected companies with licenses, all of that crap. It just adds a whole level to the project that you didn't anticipate. So you could find foundation work or plumbing issues in the property that you might not know about. I can tell you what happens a lot too when you find a property like this. You might not realize that the piping it could be old clay piping that needs to be replaced, but you don't know it until they do special tests on that piping. And you find out that half of it's cracked or it has roots growing through it, which will cause backups and plumbing issues. And so again, there are things that once you start removing drywall, once you start getting your hands dirty, it's going to add to your costs. So these are important things to find out in your inspection process. The next thing is, of course, you're going to have to do the repairs. And I know just saying those two words, do repairs, that's huge, okay? So you're going to need to hire the right contractors. So where do you find the right contractors? A lot of contractors right now are so busy that they're not going to be able to work with you. I'm just going to tell you right now, they're so busy. There's such demand. There's 6, 8 month, 10-month backlogs for contractors right now. A contractor we were trying to work with on some cabinet install, she's backed up about 6 months right now. It's just incredibly difficult to find. Now, if you do find somebody, you better, my goal in that situation is to want to keep them around so that they're going to work for you regularly. Like if you're going to do this as a lark, as a hobby, then they're not going to want to work with you for very long. Or if they do, they're going to charge you more because this is just like a one-off project and they don't know you from Adam and they're going to be gone after this project. Our team, our contractors that we have on staff, they're going to be constantly working and they're paid well, and they know the next job is like right around the corner because we're building 20, 30 properties at a time, right? So they're constantly working. If you hire a contractor, you want to make them happy and keep them around and make sure you have like the next deal, the next project after the first one is completed. So it's going to be difficult finding a contractor. One suggestion would be, first of all, just simply going through the phone book, trying to find contractors that have the money to advertise. Great, reach out to them, tell them about your project, and just, if they don't laugh at you, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. If you say, hey, I have a property, it's under contract, I love for you to come out and take a look at it and give me an estimate of repairs on this property. If they're willing to do that and they're not backlogged with projects, great. And then I would try to find a second or a third person in that mix too to give you to bid the job. You're going to want to make sure that you're going to get bids on these jobs and not just take one person's word for it. Very often you're going to find that the bids are going to be totally different. They're going to be totally out of whack. And my advice, even though I'm not a financial advisor, but from a contractor perspective, you don't choose the cheapest and you don't choose the most expensive. You choose just right, usually right in the middle. Because what will happen is that person has not gone too cheap, but they've not gone too high, and then there's some wiggle room there in case you need to go up a little bit because of some things that are discovered when you start pulling out drywall, and there's some other discoveries that have to go. So doing repairs, getting an assessment of the property before you pull the trigger. But in all of this, guys, remember, you have to make sure that the numbers make sense. So if you've got a property under contract, you've done any inspections on it, you think it's a good deal, okay, then you have a person come out to bid the job, come out to take a look at the repairs, and then if the repairs are still good and all the numbers make sense and your internal rate of return is going to be rock solid, then great, that's when you move forward. But if the numbers don't make sense out of the gate, it's just going to be too much to repair this property. I've walked away from deals before. I mean, I found things in the inspection process and I'm like, no, the numbers, for us to remediate this asbestos problem, unless you, seller, are willing to come down another $10,000 in your sales price, I can't do this deal. I can't. There's just too many problems with this property. It's happened back when I was just wholesaling properties when I first started. I would have a property and I would take it to a person that wanted to renovate properties, a house flipper, and they'd go through and they'd have their inspectors come out and they'd look at it and they'd be like, "Do you see this basement wall? It's caving in," Like, oh man, no, I didn't know that. I didn't see that. I was young, I was green, I didn't know. So what did I need to do? I said, what do we need to do to make this deal work? Well, you're going to have to come down at about $8,000 in your price because that alone is going to cost me about $8,000 to remediate. Then I'd have to go back to the seller and I have to say, Mr. Seller, I'm sorry, we discovered some things in the inspection process and this is known as getting a haircut. And I got to be very good at getting haircuts because back when I was first starting, so I'd have to go back to the seller and I have to say, I'm not going to be able to do this deal. We discovered something in the basement. So unless you're able to come down about $10,000 in your price, I can't do this deal. And they'd say, well, that's too, and they'd yell at me and hang up on me. And then they'd always call me back 24 hours later. Fine. If you can do the deal for that, we'll do it. Because they realize the property's in crap condition and they're not going to sell it anywhere else. It needs a ton of work. I've got a buyer who's willing to renovate the property and you're not going to put this on the MLS with a realtor. So here I am able to help you and get this deal done. And so that happens all the time, going back and forth on that. Then, of course, once you hire the contractors, do the repair or get the repairs lined up, run the numbers, make sure the numbers make sense. Then after all of this is in place, you're going to screen the tenants. You're going to get tenants in the property. You're going to find a local property management company to make sure that the rent makes sense. Get a great management team involved unless you're going to do it yourself, which is another level of DIYing the property. And more. Every step of the way, you are going to be involved in this process. Again, DIY, do it yourself. You are in charge. So you better know all of the ins and outs of this process. What are the rents going to look like in this neighborhood? Maybe before you even buy the property, you better figure that out. What is the vacancy rate in this neighborhood? How long can I expect this house to be vacant before it's filled with a tenant? What does the job situation look like? Am I going to be constantly changing tenants out here because there's not a lot of jobs in this town? All of those things go into consideration here. So let's get into the pros and cons of DIY investing. Again, I've done both. And I'm going to go through what I feel. This is, again, my personal opinion, but based on experience, based on a lot of experience in this business. And your mileage may vary. You know, you might hit a home run, your first property, and you're like, this is easy. Great. Great. Then you get that sophomore jinx. Then it's the second property that gives you like, you're like, oh my God, what did I do? You know, it's like it teases you. It's like gambling. You know, you go to Vegas or something, and you're like, you pull that slot machine, you know, they're watching up there in the booth. They're like, get that guy some cash. Then you're like, oh my God, I just hit it big. And then you go spend it all to the next table and you lose everything. That's what happens if you don't know what you're doing. So the pros, okay, on a DIY job, what are the pros? Well, the pros are you have more control. If you're the type of person that likes to have control, are you a control freak? Be honest with yourself. If you're a control freak, you like to have control of every step of the process, even in things you don't know much about. Be honest with yourself. Then, and you want to oversee every detail of the process, then this is going to be the way to go for you. I absolutely recommend that you become a DIY investor if you are a control freak. If you like to have control and you like to be involved in every step of the process, you must. Do not try to go with a company that's going to do it for you. You will be pissed. I'm telling you, you won't be happy about it. Also, you know, if you are looking for lower costs, so lower costs, another big piece of this, and maybe higher returns at the same time. So lower costs out the door, higher returns. It's possible. If you're going to go out, you're going to buy distressed properties. So if you're going to do the hunt, if you're going to go on the mission, Indiana Jones style, and actually go out and try to find a property that's not already bought up by other investors, that's not already bought up by the big hedge funds, that's not already listed with a real estate agent, and you can manage through direct mail. I used to spend about $11,000 a month in direct mail to find distressed properties. But this was when the market was recovering from the 2008-2009 collapse. So I would send about $11,000 in direct mail every month across the state of New Jersey where I lived. I targeted 3 different counties, and I set up, you know, special phone numbers, and I had my whole assistant, my whole team doing this so that when the phones rang, because they had a property they were interested in selling, if I got 100 phone calls, my goal was 1 deal out of that 100 phone calls. No lie, that was my number. If I was lucky, maybe 2, but out of 100 phone calls that I would call back, I would schedule hours every night, about 4 hours, where I would be on the phone talking to sellers on properties, going through and figuring out like what is the address of the property, what are some of the ins and outs of this property, figuring all of those things out on the phone before I would ever drive out and actually see the house. And then after that, 1 out of 100 phone calls might end up being a deal for me. So think about those numbers, okay? Finding distressed properties in this market is incredibly difficult. So if you think I'm just going to go on Zillow and I'm going to find a distressed property, I would caution you, number one, you might find some deals. You might find some on Craigslist for sale by owner section. Great. But if they've been sitting there on Zillow for 300 days, 100 days, there's a problem with that property. Properties don't sit. Deals do not sit. If it's a deal, an investor is going to snap it up like in a heartbeat. So if it's sitting on Zillow for 100 days or 200 days, DOM, days on market, there's a problem with that property. Something's wrong there. Either it's in a bad neighborhood, it needs way more work, it has got some sort of violation, tax lien on the property, there's some issue that you just don't see by looking at pictures on Zillow. But if you can find a deal and you have the guts and you are like a bulldog, like a dog with a bone, and you are going to spend the hours on the phone and you're going to be driving around looking at properties, if you can find a deal, you can probably find a lower cost property, and you might save yourself a few $1,000s by finding a property like that. And then that means you'll get higher returns. Remember, real estate deals, the best deals are made, the profits in real estate are made on the purchase. So if you're going to go out and buy distressed properties, there's a potential to spend less and there's a potential to make a higher return. A potential. Okay. Remember all of the unforeseen things. So you can protect yourself by having inspections and all of that. That's why you need a great team. Okay. The ability to shop around is another pro for DIY. You can shop around when you're doing things on your own. You can shop around with different materials. You can decide, we're not going to do granite countertops over here. We're going to do Formica because it's more of a high traffic, maybe a student housing kind of play. So I don't need to do this. You can shop around for different materials and make that decision, possibly even negotiate on services. If you're working with a full service team, that team is doing it all. You're not getting on the phone and saying, hey, I know your window prices. I saw the breakdown on the window prices. Let's shave a few $100s off these window prices. It's not going to happen. Sorry. Those, if that full service team like ours is building 30, 40 properties at a time, we've locked in lumber prices and window prices, and we're buying furnaces in bulk. So we're able to get negotiated prices on all of that in a way that, we're not negotiating later on this. You're not walking into a showroom picking out tile and faucets and things and doing the Martin Scorsese deal making. That's not going to happen. So if you're into that and you really want to negotiate and drive down costs on certain things because you think you can do that, or you've got an uncle who runs a tile center or a lumber farm or whatever, great. That's where you can really make bank if you're smart about how you negotiate on things like that, and negotiate bulk pricing and things like that. So you're not going to be paying retail prices. Let's talk about the cons. So those are all the pros, right? You have more control. You can find deals where you can save some money, okay? And you're going to have the ability to maybe negotiate on some of the project specifics in a way that you might not if you're working with a full service team that will do it for you. So the cons, I can tell you from my experience, it is draining. So this is a huge con. There are things you're not going to know the answers to, and you're going to get calls from your contractor. I'll never forget, I didn't know the first thing about bathtubs when I was renovating my very first property in Michigan. And I got a call from my contractor on I was in the middle of something, and we just had a newborn baby. And he was asking me questions about the tub and the tub's surround. So when he started doing work on the bathtub, he started pulling out he realized it was all rotten around the back of the tub. So I was like, oh no, what does that mean? So here I'm thinking my costs, I kind of planned in what I could make a profit on this and cash flow and knew that the numbers would made sense. And now that's getting smaller, right? Because he's discovering stuff behind a wall that I didn't know about. And so he's telling me this whole wall around the tub is rotten. It's going to fall through. I'm like, what do we do? So he was able to figure out, we were able to replace that, put up tub surround and those sorts of things. But he was constantly sort of checking in with me. Do we want to reglaze the tub or put in a brand new tub? I'm like, I don't know. I have to ask because he didn't want to do it without my knowledge. But I'm like, I don't know about reglazing tubs. I don't know what's better, what's worse, what's going to look better. I want my tenant to be happy in the property. I don't want them to walk in and see some crappy looking bathtub. So what do we do? Where I'm not spending $3,000, but I was constantly having to deal with these types of questions. We had problems with termites in the property that we discovered. We had a roofing problem. We had a flooring issue. I mean, it was just like an endless nightmare of things that I didn't know about that we had to deal with. And then when all was said and done, I got calls from the city because the sidewalk out front needed repair. I'm like, wait a minute, I own the sidewalk? Isn't that the city's job? That was a $2,300 repair on a sidewalk because it was deviated a little bit. These are things you just don't know and you don't think about, and it can be draining. It's going to require most of your mental capital, okay, and your time. And even if you have others helping you, like property management companies and contractors, they need you to sign off on it. So they're going to be contacting you. You're going to still be involved every step of the way. Do you want to do this or do you want to do this? Here's what we found. Here's the cheaper route. Here's the more expensive route. And you have to make those decisions. That is a con. That's a bad thing. Okay. If you want this to be a passive investment, why do you want to also be a project manager? So this is a huge thing to consider in this process. The next is high competition. Another con. We all know that real estate market has been hyper competitive over the past few years. It's the same when it comes to finding great rental properties. The reason that we at our company at Morris Invest have a waiting list is because of the demand. So there's a reason that people want to buy new construction rental properties, because it's a hedge against inflation, an amazing tax shelter, the cash flow is fantastic. So there's demand for it. Now amplify that by all of the investors out there trying to find off-market properties that are distressed that they can add value to, and then hope to be able to hold cash flow and place tenants in. It's hyper competitive. And like I said, when I was in New Jersey, I had a team set up. I had a phone system set up, and I was spending $11,000 a month sending out direct mail to people's doors. And I had to hit a certain level of criteria. How long have they owned the property? How much equity do they have in the property? I would mail those particular people based on the lists that I pulled and bought. And it had to meet a certain criteria. I get certain people that would call me, yelling at me, why are you asking to buy my house? I just moved in here. I was like, well, that was a mistake, And then you get lucky, a diamond in the rough. But I literally, it was amazing. I would go to meet with a potential seller on a property. This was back when it wasn't even as hyper competitive as it is now. And I would go there to sit down with a seller, and they said, yeah, I got like 3 other letters in the mail from 3 other investors. But I figured I'd hear what you have to say. And I'm like, oh, great. So now we're getting into a bidding war, over this property. So hyper competitive, very, very difficult to find these properties. If you have the temerity to do it, good for you. But depending on where you want to invest, it might be difficult to get your foot in the door, especially if you want to invest in the best rental markets in the country. That's another thing to consider. Now, let's take a little coffee break, and let's talk about working with a team, specifically working with a full service team like our team. Now, I noticed all of these problems in the market, right? I noticed the frustration from people that didn't just want like a turnkey company to hand them a key and then they're done and out of the business. I also noticed how difficult it was to find properties. For myself, spending $11,000 a month in marketing to find properties and finding like 1 or 2 deals, if I was lucky, per month. I mean, this is what I was up against. And so I knew how difficult it was. And so by then taking our company in a direction that was full service, like holding people's hand through the whole process, that was the natural evolution of what I was doing, because I saw the benefits of it. I knew that I personally, as an investor, wouldn't want to do all of these things. Every night I was on the phone. I had a special Google Voice phone number set up, and phone was constantly ringing for real estate deals and trying to find deals and going to people's properties, not finding properties, walking through all kinds of hoarding experience. Tell you, the amount of hoarding that I saw walking through, where I couldn't even open doors in certain people's houses because they were piled floor to ceiling with newspapers and newspaper clippings. And I'll tell you one creepy story. Can I tell you this real fast? There was one house that I was considering doing a deal on, and went up the stairs, and it was all the windows were like blacked out, like curtains pulled, middle of the day. And there was like this eerie like sound like from a TV coming from one of the rooms. And I went into this, I couldn't open the room door to get into this one bedroom. And it was just filled floor to ceiling with like newspapers and boxes and stuff, right? And like, there was a bed in there. Like somehow someone would sleep in this room. I don't know. And it was all shades pulled. And there was like a small, like almost like black and white television just playing like some creepy TV show. I'm like, this is like the Twilight Zone. Like that's the kind of stuff that you have to deal with as an investor. And then don't even get me started on, like, this is a 70-year-old house in New Jersey. Don't even get me started on what the basement looked like, walking down there. Like literally one of the steps broke as I'm like falling in like the money pit to try to hold on. So imagine thinking about buying this house and then the amount of work that we would have to do on renovating this thing. It's a lot. All right. So let's talk about some of the pros about this. Number one, you ensure you're in a great market. If you're working with a team that's doing all of the legwork, like we are, and understanding the demographics, new highways being built, new jobs coming in, school districts, best tax benefits, all of those things, then you're in a market with a great team that has already conducted thorough market research. And I say that because then also the banks that we are working with, especially on non-recourse financing, those banks are not going to finance deals that they have not already signed off on as well. So it's like having an extra second, third, even fourth layer of eyeballs on investments from the banks. Because, if you're working with a full service team, you're going to be able to do financing on the properties. Like if you're finding an off-market distressed property, chances are you're going to have to pay cash for that deal. Like we really didn't even talk about that, but that's a big deal, right? Someone's going to want a cash offer on a property, and this way, by working with a full service team, you get to use the bank's money. And the bank has already signed off on these properties because they're working with a full service team and they've developed those relationships. So you're in a great market. You're in a great cash flow market. We have a whole video here. We'll link it in the description below, where you can learn more about our team's specific process in analyzing markets before we ever enter those markets. We're looking at vacancy rates, making sure those vacancy rates are low, job growth. We're looking to make sure crime is low. We're looking to make sure that jobs are coming, not going. We're making sure that the cash flow is there, the property management, the diversity of jobs. All of those things go into a rental market before we ever even buy the land and start building properties. So all of those things. Again, we'll have a link to that video here in the description, as well as the chat for you guys to check it out. The next benefit of working with a full service team is that you're not going to have any expensive repairs or renovations. With new construction rental properties, all of the components are brand new. So you're getting a new furnace, a brand new water heater, a new roof, a new house. Everything is new. Even the tenant going into the property is new. So all of those things are new. And then you get the tax benefits of that as well, which we'll get to in a little bit. But again, new. You don't have to worry about asbestos piping in the basement. You don't have to worry about a foundation problem being, falling in on itself. Nothing. It's all new. So I don't bother with those old properties anymore. I used to. Way too much of a headache. It doesn't make sense anymore. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. When you add up everything, it doesn't make any sense. Next is great tenants. So there are two main reasons for this, for the tenants. Our company at Morris Invest, we only work with top tier management companies, management teams. These are the best. Okay. And again, we have a whole video on what we look for in our property management teams. I would encourage you to watch that video because we even have some interviews with property managers so you can see what their offices look like. You can see how they do their job. This is incredibly important. We need to know, how do you screen your tenants? What do you look for in a tenant that's going to live in this property? What do you make them do before they move into this property? And they get to be picky about it. Like, I don't want just any old tenant going into this property. I want a tenant with a great job. I want a tenant that has no bankruptcies on their record. I want tenants that don't have evictions on their record. All of those, a criminal record, all of those things. What are the things that you look for in a tenant? And that's what a property manager is going to do, so we can be picky about these tenants so that they'll stay in this property for a long time. And I don't mind waiting 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month for the right tenant to go into the property. I'd much rather have that house be vacant for a few weeks after the new construction is completed, while the property management company is going through applications and vetting those tenants. Don't rush and put a tenant in there that's going to, be terrible, and in 2 months is going to have to kick this tenant out or evict this tenant, and then I'm stuck with a tenant turnover, and now I've got to place a proper tenant in there. No. It's like the difference between buying crappy furniture and buying good furniture that's going to last forever. When you're going and you're buying that piece of crappy particle board furniture, it's going to break, right? The first time you move, the corner is going to break off. You know what I'm talking about. That crappy IKEA furniture, Now that's why IKEA has actually moved a lot of their furniture away from that crappy particle board. Just buy the good furniture up front, that it's going to last you a couple hundred years, right? That's what we look for. We want those tenants that are going to stay a long time. That's why great tenants are the key to your success. So again, with a great team in place, that problem will not present itself and should be taken care of. The next pro on my list here is it's more passive. After all, you're creating a new job for yourself if you're DIYing everything yourself. I personally, I'm in my 40s. I don't want another job. I love what I do, helping people build financial freedom. I don't want another job, which is also managing my properties and finding distressed properties. I've done all that. Not anymore. No, thank you, sir. So more passive. I truly believe, no investment should be entirely passive. Okay, let's get that out of your head. But you can really mitigate the amount of work that you have to do by working with a great team. Yes, you're still going to have to file your taxes. You still want to check in with your team, your property management team every so often. How's the property doing? Next year, are we able to raise rent? Is the tenant going to re-up their lease, et cetera? Having conversations about that. All of that. It's important, right? Checking in on your IRA, your self-directed IRA, all of those pieces. You still have to be active with your passive investments. Don't pretend for a second that they're just set it and forget it Ron Popeil style. You still have to be involved. But it's way more passive to have a team that's handling all of the day-to-day for you. Very, very important. You don't have to go through the hassle of screening contractors and picking out flooring and hiring property management teams, none of that. And then finally, relationship-based. The reason at Morris Invest we built the company the way we did and we evolved our services was to develop a relationship. I see some people here in the chat right now that are working with our team, like JR, for instance, and others, which is wonderful. And our goal is to build a relationship with those clients for the long term. Because if JR comes to us and says he wants to get to 7 or 10 rental properties over the course to hit financial freedom, that's our goal. And our team is going to know that and work with him for the next couple of years to make that happen. And it's relationship based. It's not, here's the keys, bye, never see you again. It's going to be an ongoing dialogue. And we're going to be able to look at JR's financial situation and say, okay, he's got an IRA over here, he's got a 401k here, he's got some cash, great, we'll pull this over here, piece this together with financing, with the banks that we work with, put all these Lego pieces together to help build a certain portfolio. That's relationship based. That's why we built the company the way we did. I much prefer that. When people book calls with us, they're like, wait a minute, I have to jump on the phone with you guys? Yeah, it's not just an internet site. Like, we want to actually get on the phone with you and have a conversation and multiple conversations with you. This is your retirement, right? This is your passive income cash flow portfolio. This is not something you just do through the internet with a point and click on Zillow. So that's why I've been, from the very beginning of starting this company years ago, there's a big red button right on the front page of our website at Morris Invest. Book a call with us. Click the book a call button and a calendar pops up and you pick a 30-minute time slot that suits you and we call you at that time. Just make sure you put in your right phone number. People put the wrong phone number all the time, or they put in the wrong email address. And then we have a relationship. We talk, I know it's amazing, right? We use the phone and we talk about your goals. And if that's not of interest to you to not have a relationship, then again, maybe a DIY approach is better for you. More hands off, then great. That's not what we want as a relationship. We want to have a relationship, a discussion, and to learn about your goals and to develop that portfolio. So again, if you don't want a relationship, if you're not the person that likes to talk to people and have someone help you in that process, then maybe doing it all yourself is a much better approach for you. The same thing is true of control. Like if you like to have more control, again, DIY is going to be definitely your cup of tea. So there are some cons with working with a full service team like ours. Number one, there's some homework. There is. When you book a call with our team, we actually have you fill out, there's a PDF download that you have to do that before your first phone call with us. And you're like, oh my God, I have to do homework? Yes. And it's like 1 page or so. It's a purpose-driven goals worksheet. And we also have our freedom cheat sheet. So when you book a call with us, it's like a PDF download. It'll get sent to your email inbox. And we want you to work through it because it's going to figure out exactly like what your freedom number is, your overall finances, and we're going to be able to, that'll prepare us for that first phone call. And so some people might see that as a con, and if they do, then that's somebody that we wouldn't want to work with, right? If someone wouldn't take 5-10 minutes out of their day to work on their own finances, that's probably not going to be a good fit for us. And the benefit of what we do is we get to pick who we work with, right? There's people that book calls with us all the time that we just choose not to work with because we just don't think it's a good fit. You know, they're not interested in their own finances. They don't want to do the homework. They don't want to figure out their freedom number. And that's just not going to be a fit for us, you know? In years past, we might have worked with those people and it's always been a problem, you know? And so we just don't do it anymore. So that's a con. There's some homework, okay? You've got to figure out one of these worksheets. It's very, very simple. And that'll help us to figure out if working with us or a full service company is going to be a fit or not. Another con is there's no inventory list. Sometimes people will call us and say, can you just send me a list of inventory of your properties and I'll make a decision? We don't do that. Like when you work with our company, you're not just shopping for a rental property. To me, the rental property is secondary, it's third, it's fourth it's not even in the top 5 things. Because we're building the properties, that's fine. We'll figure that out later. Our goal is to help you reach your financial goals. And so what are those goals? Where are you, we can fit the property later. It's not about you just picking out of a hat like what type of property. So we don't have an inventory list. We believe that buying a rental property should, we don't believe that like when you go into a diner or like a cheesecake factory and there's like a menu that comes out that's this thick and you can pick from anything, we don't feel that that's not the way we want to operate. That you should just be able to pick properties off of menu and that's it. That's not the way we operate. It's never been. It's just always felt icky to me, so we just don't do it. Also a con is there's limited market availability. We're incredibly particular about the markets that we're in, and we do a lot of research to be in these markets before we ever break ground and start building. We only invest in markets where we've heavily vetted that we've heavily vetted all of the demographic material in these areas. And we've heavily done all of our research before we ever invest in certain markets. So, if you're looking for properties that are like right in your backyard, chances are it's probably not the best rental market in the country. And if that's something that you're interested in, is being able to drive by your rental properties in your backyard, then it's not going to be a fit for you at all. We are only in the best rental markets in the country. We're in Texas is the number 1 landlord friendly state in the country. So there's a reason that we build our properties in Texas. Most of them, that's where most of our focus is right now. It's just, we have the best contractors. It's the most landlord friendly. The job growth is phenomenal. So if I get emails from people all the time like, hey, what about, I live here in Iowa. Do you have any properties in Iowa? No, we're not in Iowa. So, but if you're like hung up on Iowa, then I would suggest you go kind of do it yourself and find a property in Iowa. But Iowa does not meet our target vetting from a demographic and job growth, and it does not meet our targets. So we're not going to build there. So again, there is limited market availability. I can tell you, doing a show like this, I will see like questions all the time, like, what about this town in Georgia? I'm like, it might be fine, but we're not building there. And we try to keep it small. We're building about 500 properties a year for our clients, so we're not building tens of thousands. And we keep it focused. So we keep it focused in the areas where we've done extensive research, where there's job growth, low vacancy, low crime, and frankly are kind of boring, And boring I love, because then they're not given craziness when you have crazy market undulations like in Vegas and San Francisco and this. I like boring, consistent, nice cash flow in markets that are really recession proof. That's what I love. That's where we like to build. So We have a full video on that too. We'll link it up in the description below on what it's like to work with a full service team. I'd encourage you to check out that video so you can get some more sense of what we do and see if it's a fit for you or if the DIY is more of a fit for you. I mean, I think this video, I don't think I left any stone unturned. I mean, in the thousands of real estate deals that I've done, many of them, I mean, a huge majority of them have been DIY. And the fact that I have more wrinkles and gray hair is as a result of those DIY deals. Absolutely 100% my experience. So to wrap things up, it's really important that you really dig in and decide what you want out of this experience of investing. Ultimately, it comes down to what you want to do and what you want your involvement level to be. No matter what you choose, it's important that you do your own research one way or the other. Absolutely. Always get an inspection on a property, okay? Always get an inspection, whether you're working with a team or you're doing it yourself. And if you do choose to work with a team, make sure you're getting all of your questions answered on the phone. So like if you book a call with our team at Morris Invest, we are going to expect that every question you have, we will answer. And we're not going to... we're going to have multiple phone calls because we want to make sure that every question you have is answered. You want to fly to town and meet our team? Please come to town. Do it. Walk through their properties. Meet the property management team. All of it. If that's what you want to do, absolutely. Please come to town. We'd be more than happy to show you the different markets if you want. But on the phone, we'd be able to answer any question you have. That is imperative. So if you'd like to book a call with our team, just go to morrisinvest.com, click on the book a call button. Remember, you're going to have to do some homework. So download those PDFs, prepare for your first phone call. And when we get on the phone, we're going to ask you about those PDF downloads. What is your freedom number? What are your goals? And we'll go from there. So I hope this answers your questions on DIY versus full service. So if you'd like to do that, jump over there. Happy to answer any questions. We can jump into the chat now. XRP Bush says, I'm buying my first commercial property. Do you have any opinion if an LLC or a sub S Corp is better, an advantage in setting up an LLC in a particular state? Well, I can't tell you based on the commercial deal it's all going to come down to how you have it structured, Rob. If you're partnering with others, it's going to be different, obviously, from that perspective. And if you're doing capital raising and things like that, I can tell you that we have LLCs for our individual properties, and those report up to our main LLC holding company in Wyoming. From a tax and liability perspective, it's fantastic. And then, of course, from there, it speaks differently to a trust or a land trust or however you have it structured separately. Yeah, it's going to be different depending on your capital raise and who you're working with on that. I hope that helps. Lindsay H says, lots of growth in Texas. Yep, it is. Karina says, about a 12-unit property, June of 2021, average 550 each, had bad management and haven't made profit yet with the repairs, etc. I put 113,000 down. I owe 465,000. What do you suggest next? Since I want to get my next property. Boy. So Karina is a perfect example of some of the things that creep up with DIYing this, right? So some things, the property management, bad property management has left her without the types of profits that she would like. And with the additional, it sounds like, Karina, were there additional repairs that were not anticipated upon initial inspection, walkthrough, etc.? It seems like that's probably the case. It's things that are eating into your profits. Well, I mean, if you're not cash flowing on it, typically with a commercial property like that, it's like a 10-year hold on one of those properties. So 10 years is kind of the typical hold on one of those before you're selling it, a commercial property. So Karina, I would just look at the numbers. I mean, I'm not a financial advisor. I can't tell you what to do. But I always want to be analyzing my portfolio of properties. And there's no shame, Karina, in saying, you know what, this one didn't work. Cut bait, And if it's going to hurt you in the long run to continue to hold on to a bad investment, You may want to really seriously consider looking at the numbers on what this would mean to put it on the market and try to sell it. Either sell it for a loss and take the cap and take the write-off, or sell it for a break even. There's such demand for properties right now. I would think, and obviously commercial is a different animal than what I do in residential. Like at Morris Invest, we only build single families and duplexes. That's our main focus because we think we get the best bang for our buck in that regard. So that's my focus. But from a commercial perspective, obviously there's you're getting different loans, there's different interest rates. It's a different animal altogether. I would just speak with a commercial broker and be frank with them and say, here's what I'm dealing with. What do you think if we listed this property, we might reasonably be able to get on it? Another question I have for you, Karina, is what about value add? Have you, one of the obviously big areas for commercial properties is when you buy a commercial property, how can I force appreciation on the rent? How can I increase the value of this property? And one way to do that is adding value to the property. I mean, increasing rents. How do you add value? Is it adding a pool? Is it adding a common area? Is it adding a gym in the property that makes it more appealing for tenants in the property? And that might be something where you'd want to bring on partners who have experience in that regard. So maybe not cutting it for a loss, but maybe bringing on some more experienced commercial investors who might say, well, we could really do some things to this property to increase rents, get this bad property management team out of here, and really turn this ship around, so to speak. To me, those are the two answers, right? Sell it, take the capital loss, the write down on it, and reposition those funds elsewhere. Or number two, try to correct that ship by getting the right people as investors, maybe involved in that process, and going through. So I hope that helps. Easy J Money says, can you get any of your duplex properties with a few acres where you can hook up a trailer with plumbing and electricity? That way I can live there as well as have tenants in both units. No, I mean, that's not types of properties we build. We're in developments, in great school districts. So there's not a lot of extra land in that regard. That wouldn't be something I would advise, but maybe it's something where you would consider living in one of the units, right? One half of the units instead of hooking up a trailer, so you could cash flow one of the units next door. Johan, nice to see you, says the team is great. Your team is great. Thank you so much. Megan, Haley, Addison, they all guided me through my first property with Morris Invest. Now I'm just waiting to get the right tenant in the property. Absolutely. So, I always say it pays to just wait, a few extra weeks, depending on holidays. Sometimes if it's like Christmas time or whatever, it could be a few extra weeks to get the right tenant in the property. Then that tenant will stay a long time. That's the goal. Rather than rushing to stick a tenant in that property, I'd much rather have the right person who's going to, that the property management team is going to vet and give you the right tenant in that property. Well, I hope you guys found this helpful today. I am losing my voice because I've had some allergy craziness today. So kind of went long today, but we had a lot of content to talk about here with DIY investing versus full service. I hope you found this valuable. Again, if you're interested in booking a call with our team, we're happy to help you. So please book a call with our team. Just go to morrisinvest.com. Click on the big book a call button right there on the front of the screen. You can't miss it. And then just pick a 30-minute time slot on your calendar. Your calendar, it will pop up and you get to pick the time slot. Just put in your correct email address and phone number. That way we'll be able to walk you through that process and jump on the phone with you at the time that you select. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your week. I hope you guys had a wonderful Easter holiday if you're celebrating and getting back to work this week. We'll see you next week at the same time, Tuesday at noon Eastern time. Much love to all of you. I'll ask you one last question here. Maro asks, what is the average rent in your properties? Average, I mean, we've got multiple price ranges. So, I mean, I think the lowest is going to be like in the $700 a month range for like a smaller single family that we do, on up to well over, in the mid 3,000s a month in cash flow. for some of our duplexes. So there's quite a broad range. So there's not really an average, but it's yeah, it's it's a nice range depending on the single family, higher end single family, lower end duplex, higher end duplex. We've got student housing duplexes, which are fantastic. And then we've got our higher end duplexes, have granite countertops and so forth. So again, price range differences there. But I hope that helps. Anthony Reed says, I have 2 so far. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. We'll be back here again next week. Check out all of the other great resources we have here on the channel. Our team works really, really hard to bring you. It's all free. You should never have to pay money for, some 30. I've seen people pay like $30,000 courses for real estate investing. That breaks my heart. No. Put that towards a property, for crying out loud. All that you need to know about real estate investing is right here on this channel. Again, in all of my blood, sweat, and tears over the years in real estate, it's all right here on the channel. So much love to all of you. We'll see you next time, everyone.